I'm Matt Plummer, and I'm running for Shasta County District 4 Supervisor, and I want to share my vision for the future of Shasta County. But before looking forward, I believe we need to look back. When the settlers first made the trek across the country to Shasta County in the 1850s, they did so because they were willing to sacrifice the ease and comfort of a normal life. They were willing to lead. When FDR announced the construction of the second largest dam and people moved here from all over the western states, they did so because they saw a path to a better life, and they wanted to be part of something historic. They were willing to lead. When the Wintu and the Pitt River and the Yana tribes fought to regain their tribal identity in the 1980s, they did so because they saw a path to a better life for their children. They were willing to lead. Shasta County has a long history of leaders. In fact, Shasta County was one of 27 original counties in California. I like what Mark Twain says about California, and I think it fits for Shasta County. He says, "The easy and slothful didn't come to California. They stayed home." But somewhere throughout the years, as the state's coastal cities grew in prominence and size, we began to believe what others who didn't and don't know us say about us. We began to believe that rather than being leaders and pioneers, we were insignificant and incapable of doing anything historic. Rather than being the vanguard, we began to believe that we were outcasts or even misfits. Now let's be clear, this is not true. And yet this belief has turned into our reality in many unfortunate ways. Today we have a childhood trauma rate that is 2.5 times the state average. We have the highest suicide rate in California, and it's not even close. We're more than 2 times the state average. We have the highest divorce rate in California. Our road score is 49 out of 100. Putting us just above only 6 other counties. If you look at the data from 2007 to 2020, we have the highest increase in homelessness in the country. Now you might be thinking, Matt, I thought you were going to share a positive vision for the future of Shasta County. I thought you said we need to change the conversation, but I didn't think it would be like this. Well, in order for us to actually make progress on these challenges, we need to acknowledge they exist. That is the first step to solving them. And I feel that our current leaders are not talking about these challenges enough. I believe that we can solve these challenges and make Shasta an even better place to live. I believe it is our time to lead. So what must we do in order to lead? Well, there are 4 things. To lead, we must believe. We must believe that we can make progress where other generations and other counties haven't done so. To lead, we must focus. We must focus on the challenges we all agree exist and avoid getting distracted by the dysfunction happening some 3,000 miles away and dominating our screens. To lead, we must excel. We must excel in how we operate our county government, how we run our businesses, and how we raise our families. And finally, to lead, we must collaborate. We must collaborate in spite of our disagreements. We must learn to disagree without being disagreeable. And we must learn to find a way to unite around the common challenges we face rather than the parties we affiliate with. So let's take each of these in turn. To lead, we must believe. With the odds stacked against us that I just mentioned, limited resources, and a rural county, how could we possibly lead the 4th largest economy in the world? Well, as long as we believe that we can't, we certainly will not. I think I know a little something about a small town that led. You see, I grew up in a small rural town just 1 square mile big. I had just 16 to 18 kids in my class for 9 years. We had to learn to disagree without being disagreeable because there was no escaping those kids in your class. You were stuck with them. Now, one would say that there was nothing really special about my little town of Califon where I grew up. There weren't any fancy businesses, no natural resources or great beauty like we see here. But there was something special about Califon. We had a reputation for having an amazing community, excelling in education, and holding our own in sports. In fact, when I graduated from the regional high school that had 300 people compared to my just 16, a few years later, 2 of us from my 16-person class were ranked in the top 5 in academics in our 300-person class. And 2 of us won the Athletes of the Year, the male and female Athletes of the Year, in our 300-person class. So how did we do it? Well, let me share one example of how. When I was 10 years old, my 4th grade teacher asked me if I would come in early to do some extra reading, some harder reading. I'm not sure why at this point, but I agreed to do that. And in 5th grade, my teacher asked me and a few others to do the same and to do some harder math. Our little school rearranged the whole 6th through 8th grade schedule so that me and a few others could go to high school in the morning and take more advanced math. You see, my little town didn't get discouraged by their size or lack of resources. Great everyday people took it upon themselves to sacrifice for the good of others, to notice the people around them and invest in them, and to put in the extra hours. There's no reason why Shasta County can't do the same. And in fact, I do see glimmers of this here. The teachers at Reading School of the Arts, where my kids go to school and my wife teaches, have extended the same opportunity to my girls at a cost to themselves. And we see leadership in other forms here too. A coffee shop that started in Reading has competed for the top coffee roaster in the country this summer. A woman that grew up in Reading has led the U.S. women's soccer team to multiple world championships. And just a few months ago, a group of entrepreneurs here built the first 3D printed home in California. It's time for us to believe that we are called to lead. It's time for leadership to move from just a few isolated examples to the defining characteristic of our community. We can lead. It's time we believe we can. Okay, next up, to lead we must focus. If you ask most people in Shasta County, and in fact all around the state, what are the top issues that you want our government to address? Two will almost always find themselves to the top of that list: crime and homelessness. And we should and we must take action on these issues. For example, we need to get to work on building a new jail so we can hold those who commit crimes on our street accountable, and we can effectively rehabilitate those same people so they can re-enter society as productive members. But even as we address these dual challenges, we can't deceive ourselves into thinking that we're solving the actual problem. In fact, we will only be putting a Band-Aid on a deeper wound. A wound that will surface in various ways if we don't address that. What is this wound? The wound is what I'm calling the 5 factors of family failure, because we are among the worst on these 5 metrics: child abuse and neglect, childhood trauma, percent of kids growing up without parents, domestic violence, and divorce. Now, I elevate these issues not to cause anyone shame, but to bring the needed focus to help address them. And let me emphasize that single parents, divorced adults, victims of abuse of any kind need support, not the condemnation of our community. But these 5 factors of family failure are the root cause of the crime and homelessness challenges that we see so visibly. If we don't improve in these areas, we will be forced to keep building bigger jails and more micro shelters. We must focus on overcoming them. When working with a foundation started by the owner of Wendy's restaurant, I remember reading the child services file, the case file, of a young girl who had moved from house to house in the system, experiencing even further unspeakable incidents of abuse from those who were supposed to care for her, until an older single woman who had already adopted a number of children decided she could love one more. That single older woman changed those children's future. Now, the goal of Wendy's Wonderful Kids, which was the program that was helping match this girl to this older woman, was to find more people like this woman who are willing to adopt older children in spite of their past trauma and abuse. Now, a 5-year national study revealed that children referred to the Wendy's Wonderful Kid program were 3 times more likely to be adopted. So we focused on getting this program to more states and recruiting a funder that would focus their resources on growing this program. That is what focus looks like: finding an evidence-based program that works and focusing the people and the financial resources on growing it to meet the need. To lead, we must focus both on the challenges we all agree exist and on the programs that are proven to address them. To lead, we must also excel. We have been told that limited government is our goal, but a limited government is of little use if it is not also effective. I believe we should have the most excellent county government in the state. I believe our county government can become an efficient, effective problem-solving machine. I mean, aren't we tired of our government spending more and more of our money without making things any better? Governments don't deserve the right to pat themselves on the back for spending more money. You know, we hear from Sacramento, oh, we spent $12 billion on homelessness. It doesn't matter how much you spend. It matters what results you're getting. And there is no excellence without goals. But currently our county has no stated goals or priorities. And without goals, it only follows that we don't have any written plans for how we're going to achieve those things. Now, how can we solve problems if we don't have any published goals? How can we, the people, hold the county government accountable if we don't know what they're trying to achieve? And how can we make budget decisions if we don't know what all that spending is supposed to accomplish? Our county must have goals, and it must report on the progress it makes towards those goals. The City of Reading publishes citywide and department-specific goals with each of its budgets. We can too. And once we have goals and a way of measuring our progress towards those goals, then we must have plans for achieving those goals that the board can review and approve. If this sounds basic, you're right. It's hard to imagine any business operating without goals, metrics, and plans. It's time our county excels. If this sounds uncomfortable for those working and leading our county government, it may be, but excellence isn't achieved easily. Excellence is forged on the anvil of hard work. I don't say this to shame our county staff. No, I'm eager to work with all county staff to make this a reality. Because I know as well as you do that we can't have an effective government if no one wants to work there. If those with the most experience are leaving, and if those that remain are afraid to bring forth ideas that they think will make our county a better place to live. Excellent governments and excellent organizations are places that attract excellent talent. But unfortunately today, we are seeing many of our leaders with years of experience leaving our county government because of the toxic culture. We are seeing key positions remain unfilled. For example, a whole floor of our jail remains closed because we can't find enough deputies to keep it open. This is a travesty because even if our jail was fully open, it is not large enough to hold all those who are committing crimes on our streets. And the problem is not only money. I heard recently of a person who transitioned to working in the jail because of the bonus that was offered, only to leave weeks or months later because they couldn't tolerate the work environment. I understand what it takes to help an organization excel because my career has been built around this very goal. Several years ago, I was working with the Police Athletic League of Philadelphia. When we started working with them, they thought they were doing great as the largest youth-serving organization in the city. However, an analysis I led showed that the vast majority of the 20,000 youth who were coming to their centers actually didn't show up more than 4 times a year, making it impossible for them to have much of an impact on most of the kids who were coming to their centers. Together, we built a plan to change that. A few years later, I worked with a large federal agency to slow the rise of diabetes. They had a program with proven effectiveness, but no plan for helping it get to the 90 million people who needed that program. Working with them, we developed a 5-year plan to get that to radically more people. To lead, we must excel. We need a limited and effective government. We must turn our county government into an efficient, effective, problem-solving machine. And finally, to lead, we must also collaborate. We are arguably the most divided this county has been in recent history. We have experienced 5 recall attempts in the last 3 years. Come to a county board meeting, and you might hear a racial slur. You'll hear one adult calling another an oversized toddler. You'll hear members of the public hurling the most demeaning insults at each of the board members. And this divisiveness is not just limited to board meetings. It's infecting every aspect of our lives. I've heard many people as I've been campaigning tell me that they don't want to talk to their neighbors except about the most bland topics because they worry that a deep-seated, ideologically driven anger is lurking just beneath the surface. We apply labels like radical leftists or MAGA extremists to our neighbors, our teachers, our school board members without having real conversations about what and why they believe the way they do. Now let's be clear, no one group has a monopoly on these corrosive behaviors. In fact, we are seeing the third law of physics at work. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. But it must stop, or we risk eroding the social fabric that makes this a place where we want to live, and that enables us to make progress on the challenges we have discussed today. I'm not here to tell you that I'm going to be a unity candidate, because we have experienced the emptiness of those words at the national level and even locally. Instead, I will tell you how I will lead. I teach companies how to engage in better critical thinking, and one of the key principles of critical thinking is to consider alternatives to your ideas and to look for weaknesses in your own thinking. This is the basis of how we get to better ideas, and it is in the DNA of how I approach solving problems. I understand that I don't have the monopoly on good ideas, and that the best ideas come through wrestling with different opinions. I commit to you that not only will I listen to ideas and opinions that differ from my own, but I will proactively seek them out. In fact, you can visit my website, mattplummer.com/listening-tour right now to share your own opinions. It's time to put aside the childish personal attacks and turn our focus to debating ideas and actions. The problems we face are not simple. It will take all of us. In fact, as one of our nation's presidents once said, it will take a great army of our people dedicated to a disciplined attack upon our common problems. The need for collaboration, however, is not only reserved to those in the county. It also refers to our relationship with the state. Now, let me be clear. I have many disagreements with the policies and culture coming out of Sacramento. In fact, I spent 7 months working 60 to 70 hours a week without pay to help a candidate try to unseat Governor Newsom. That said, the board's current approach to the state is destined for failure, and we are already seeing the consequence of this failed strategy. We are told that we can effectively give the state a middle finger by terminating our contract with Dominion voting machines, and then boast about it on national and international news without any fallout. Well, the fallout is here already. There is currently a bill moving through the state legislature that not only would prohibit other counties from terminating a contract with a voting system without having another in place, but now would make it illegal to hand count an election when you have over 1,000 voters. The current board's approach is producing the exact opposite of what they promised: more state regulations and more intervention into our lives. Instead of this approach, which will result in a tighter grip on our county, I will employ a 3-part strategy to enhance local control and grow our freedom. Number 1, I will collaborate with other like-minded counties to take collective action rather than acting alone. Number 2, I will develop relationships with state officials, earning their respect through our collective excellence and honor, which will enable us to influence them. I will grow support for our way of life by operating with reason and excellence and superior critical thinking. George Washington almost lost the Revolutionary War by employing the approach that the board is currently using. He decided to go into a head-to-head battle with the much more powerful British Empire in the Battle of New York City. And if not for an act of God, the Continental Army likely would have been destroyed. But George Washington learned from that mistake, and he shifted his strategy to winning the hearts and minds of the people in the colonies. At that time, there was about 50-50, 50% loyal to the British Empire and 50% in favor of the Revolution. He also moved from more direct head-to-head battles with the British Empire to more covert maneuvers. And he ultimately collaborated with the French, who, at the time we might have said, we don't agree with the French on many things, but he found common ground. And that shift in strategy enabled us to win the Revolutionary War. To lead, we must collaborate, both as a community and as fellow counties in this state. I believe it is our time to lead. And maybe you've made it through this whole speech and you're wondering, why is he so fixated on leading? Well, there is one reason. We have but 2 choices: either lead or be led. If we do not lead, we will be led further down the path of homelessness, crime, mental illness, addiction, wildfires, and water shortages. If we do not lead, we will be led further down the path of divisiveness, anger, and fear. And ultimately, if we do not lead, our children and their children will be led to find somewhere else to call home, and they will abandon the unparalleled beauty and the rich history of leadership and grit here in Shasta County. We can lead. In fact, I believe there is nothing more natural to us. One day, not too far from now, we will look back and remember what it took to produce the strongest families in the state, the healthiest children, the best roads, and the lowest crime rates. One day we will look back on the sacrifices we have made for the good of our family, our neighbors, and this county, and count it all worth it. One day we will look back and realize that we have led this county into a better future. Let's take on this grand assignment before us and make future generations proud. Thank you.